Should you do practice tests when preparing for the paralegal licensing exam? My answer to that is absolutely. And before I explain why, if you're new here, my name is Naomi Joy. I am the founder of prettyparalegal.com, where we believe that advocacy doesn't have to be ugly. All right, so let's get into it. Practice tests. You've all heard the saying that practice makes perfect, and that's true as long as you are practicing for the type of test that you're taking. So what do I mean by that? The paralegal licensing exam is a very specific type of test. So you should be doing practice tests that accurately simulates what the experience of writing the LSO's licensing exam will be like. That means your practice test should have multiple choice questions. They should also be scenario based and not just substantive law based. In the licensing exam, what you're going to find is that many, if not most, of the questions will be based on fact-based scenarios. In other words, the Law Society is going to give you sort of a case, right? They'll give you a set of facts, and within those set of facts will be some kind of issue, and then there will be a question which will have 4 potential answer options for you to choose from. So you want to make sure that whatever practice test you're doing is structured in that similar way. Most of the questions aren't going to be simple, straightforward questions like,
how do you refer to a judge? A, Your Honor. B, Your Worship. C, My Lord.
You know what I mean? You may get a few of those like peppered here and there, but for the most part, what you're going to get are long paragraphs. And I mean long paragraphs that alone may take you 2 minutes to read and understand. And the challenge is that the licensing exam is structured in a way where you have no more than 2.5 minutes to answer each question. Right, on average, I want to say, thereabouts, okay? So you're not really going to have a lot of time to really read through these long paragraphs with the meandering story. You have to be able to get used to knowing how to decode what's relevant and what's irrelevant, to spot the issues, and to really understand the question that's being asked of you. And you're not going to be able to do that unless you do practice tests that are structured in a similar way that will get you in the habit of answering those types of questions. By doing practice tests, it's also going to give you an opportunity to develop your intellectual muscle memory and also your physical muscle memory. So you want to be writing exams or doing practice tests that are going to simulate not only the types of questions that you're going to encounter on the exam, but also simulate the experience of writing that or answering those types of questions, right? You want to be dealing with it in a format that's going to be similar to what you'll encounter on the exam, and you want to really train your body to have the kind of focus that's required in the kind of setting that you're going to be writing the exam in. Okay, so that's something else to think about. Also, the Law Society's paralegal licensing exam is it's sort of structured in 3, you're given 3 categories, right? So there's administrative law, there's civil litigation, there's criminal law, criminal and quasi-criminal law, and peppered throughout each of those 3 sections are other areas such as jurisdiction and fundamentals, advocacy, practice management, professional responsibility, etc. Right? So if you're able to find practice tests that are similar in their structure as well as in their time, that's also going to be a huge advantage for you. So one of the common questions that my students ask me is, where should we get practice tests from? There are 3 organizations that offer practice testing that I would personally recommend. So I'm going to give you like the pros, my pros and cons. Keep in mind, this is just my personal opinion, and I encourage you to check them all out for yourself and decide what you think is going to be best for you. So coming in at number 3 is Paralegal Pathways Ontario. Now, what I like about this company is that their website's really easy to navigate. They have only one practice test, so I really like that. They make it very simple. They are offering 170 questions for only $84.99 plus tax. And you can actually bundle that with their indexes for $149.99. Personally, I'm not a fan of indexes, and I've made another video about why that is, so it's linked below. If you're not sure of whether you want to actually buy their practice test, they do offer a sample test so that you can just see what the experience is like. The only con for me is that the sample test doesn't really give you a full sort of experience or full perspective on the kinds of questions that you'll encounter on their paid practice test or on the LSO exam in general. I've personally tried their sample test. What I didn't like about it was that there were 2 questions that were repeated. So kind of lost a question there, and I noticed a couple of typos, but I'm sure that they're going to be working out those glitches. It's a new company. One of the other things that I liked about Paralegal Pathway Ontario's practice test is that at the end of it, when you make your submission, they actually give you your results. So they'll show you which answers you got answered correctly and which answers were incorrect. The only thing I don't like about how they administer it, though, is that they don't actually explain why your answers were correct or why your incorrect answers were wrong. So I feel like there's a missed opportunity here to teach you. Now, to be fair, when you write the licensing exam, when you actually write it, the Law Society is not going to give you a report at the end of it. They're not going to say, oh, good job, here are all the answers you got right and here are all the answers you got wrong. When you pass, you're just going to get a pass. They'll tell you pass and that's it. If you didn't pass, they will send you a report, but the report doesn't actually give you an itemized list of all the answers that you got wrong. I think that Paralegal Pathway Ontario is doing you a favor by letting you know when you got an answer wrong or right. I just wish that they would give some sort of explanation so that you can learn from the experience of writing the practice test. The other issue that I personally found with the PPO practice tests is that there were some answer options that presumed facts in the case scenario that weren't specifically stated. The way it was worded was confusing, and I think that a paralegal candidate who is trying to practice and who's never done this before could easily get confused with the practice test, and if they get the answer wrong, they may not necessarily understand why. But overall, I think it's a really good option and you should check it out. Coming in hot at number 2 for me is Emtion. And let me tell you, this company has been my favorite company to promote over the last, God, how many years have I been doing this? Over the last 6 years. Not even kidding. Every single student that I have coached in our How to Pass P1 licensing exam prep program has been encouraged to purchase Emtion practice tests. I've used them myself and I've recommended them. At this point, I probably should do an affiliate deal with Emtion because I'm always sending students their way. Emtion has been one of my favorite companies to recommend when it comes to paralegal licensing exam practice tests, because the way they write their practice tests is consistent with the kind of questions and scenarios that you are going to encounter on the actual exam. Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if they wrote the actual licensing exam. That's how good I feel their content is. The other thing I really like about their practice tests is that if you get an answer wrong, at the end of writing the exam, when you make your submission online, they will give you a report. And the old paper tests that like back in my day, when you used to be able to download them, they also did that. You were able to get an explanation for why the correct answer was the correct answer. And I felt that that was an effective way to not only allow you to practice writing an exam in the way that you will encounter it with the Law Society. They didn't miss the teachable or the teaching opportunity. You know what I mean? And I found that to be very valuable myself when I was writing the licensing exam, and my students have found that to be very valuable as well. Another pro when it comes to Emtion practice tests is that they have multiple tests. I mean, this is a company that has been around for a very, very long time. They are, in my opinion, one of the top organizations for legal education. When I was in school, even our textbooks were published by Emtion. Okay, so that's how good they are. Each of their practice tests, I believe, are about 120 questions and cost $75 plus tax for each practice test. And of course, that may change at a later date. It's always a good idea to check out their website directly just to see if they're offering any specials or what their current price is. The only downside to having multiple practice tests at $75 per test is that it's hard to know, especially if this is your very first time writing, it's hard to know how many practice tests you should buy. That being said, they also offer practice tests in bundles. So if you think you may want to try more than one practice test, then you can purchase them in a bundle, and you're going to pay more, of course. So I think it's around $149 right now. That price may be incorrect, so definitely check their website. So you'll pay a little bit less per test if you bundle them. The only other thing that I would say I wish they did a little bit differently, both at Paralegal Pathways Ontario and Emtion, is to actually offer timed tests. And the reason I say that is because, remember, this is about practicing to make perfect, right? This is about developing the muscle memory of being able to think quickly on your feet, think of how to apply the spirit of the law to your case scenarios, how to find the answers quickly because you don't have a lot of time. Time is a huge factor in the paralegal licensing exam, and you do yourself a disservice if you're doing practice tests that aren't timed. Now, I'm sure Emtion and PPO will say, well, the candidate can time themselves, but it doesn't actually create the same sense of urgency in your mind, in your body, as when you know that there is a countdown happening while you do the test questions. The fact of the matter is, when you actually go to write the licensing exam, there is going to be a giant clock on the wall, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. There will be like a giant digital clock on the wall counting down every second of the time that you have within which to write the exam. That creates this intense pressure. By just setting up your own clock and like trying to navigate that while also trying to answer the questions, it sort of pulls your head out of the game. So that's something that I wish they did a little bit differently. The other thing that I wish they did a little bit differently, it would be to offer more sample test questions. So Emtion, for example, right now will offer 6 free sample questions so that you can just get a taste for like how their system works. But I wish that they offered more questions that were diverse in terms of the types of questions that you will encounter on the exam. One of the things that I teach my students in our How to Pass P1 Licensing Exam Prep program are the 5 common types of questions that you're going to encounter on the licensing exam. Emtion does a really great job overall in their practice tests of presenting you with all 5 of those types of questions. I just wish their free sample test demonstrated that, to give candidates a better idea of what they're going to encounter on the actual exam before they purchase. It's an investment, right? $75 per test. I think that's a good price, to be honest, but I do appreciate that for many of you that's going to be an investment, especially if you want to purchase multiple practice tests. That's kind of how I feel about it. Either way, I still love Emtion, and I will always promote their business. I'm going to link their website below. I'm trying to encourage you all to check it out and present you with as much information as I can to help you recognize what your options are. And last but not least, coming in at number 1 is Pretty Paralegal. Let me tell you about our practice test and what makes it different from the tests you're going to receive from PPO and Emtion. First, it's going to be 160 questions long. And that's exactly the same amount of questions on the current paralegal licensing exam that is offered by the Law Society. The other thing is that it's going to be a timed test. We want you to get into the practice of being able to write under that timed pressure, because doing so is going to build the muscle memory to help you think quicker on your feet, become more resourceful, and learn how to engage your analytical reasoning and your logical reasoning skills to quickly and most correctly answer the questions. And you'll have the ability to do that up until the day that you actually write the actual exam. When you submit your exam, you will receive a report immediately thereafter. And not only will that report tell you if you got the answers correct or incorrect, it will also explain why the correct answer is the correct answer, much like the Emtion report that you get afterward, except with one difference. There will also be an explanation about why each of the wrong answers were in fact incorrect. Our report will highlight some of the tricks in the case scenario or why the wording is confusing. And we intend to do that by structuring the questions in the same way as what you'll experience on the licensing exam. But our objective is to help you to identify where the little nuances are that can sometimes lead candidates astray into picking the wrong answer. And this way, it's just going to enhance your learning opportunity even more. The other thing that makes our practice tests unique to some of the other ones out there in the market right now is the fact that we also offer complimentary courses and programs that actually teach you how to answer the questions quickly and correctly. So, if you're interested in learning more, definitely click on the link below to sign up. Visit prettyparalegal.com. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to email us. Our email address is info@prettyparalegal.com. And we will be happy to answer any questions that you have and learn how we can better serve you, not only in the exam, but as you launch your career. See you soon.